So welcome.
All right. All right, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you Tuesday Talks. Thank you Elizabeth for inviting me. I hope that introduction was somewhat entertaining because that's all I'm going to be talking about. So first, to promote my museum, next event we got coming up is CJ Box is doing a book signing March 28th. And his new book we should have available for sale. So be sure to come and get your book signed by CJ Box. And then 4th of July is coming, America 250. I think Tim might be doing a Tuesday talk on it in the future. But right now I'm starting to plan July 8th, doing a reading of the Declaration of Independence at the pavilion at the museum because it's the 250th anniversary of when they actually proclaimed the Declaration to the public in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Best way to find out about museum events is either Facebook or to the actual museum website, saratogamuseumwy.com. But I'm going to be talking largely about me in this presentation, so it's hard to put together. So I was born in Springfield, Colorado. I'll save you the guessing. I'm 37 years old. So I was born in Colorado. Please don't tell anybody. I want people here to like me. Springfield, if you haven't heard of it, it's in the very southeast corner of the state, probably smaller than Saratoga, almost spitting distance from Kansas. I lived there because my dad worked for Colorado State University at the Agricultural Research Center down there until I was about 12, and then Colorado State University closed the place down. My dad lost his job, so he had to find a new job, and he found a job working for the University of Wyoming as the agricultural extension agent in Johnson County up in Buffalo. So I grew up in Buffalo, largely, so it makes me a Wyoming boy, I think. So yeah, I went to high school in Buffalo, played football with Chris Brzezinski, graduated in 07. Some pictures of my graduation. My mom was largely a stay-at-home mom when I was growing up. I had two younger sisters. They're both married now, school teachers living near Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And I've got 5 nieces and 3 nephews now. So growing family. So after high school, I went to Sheridan Community College up in Sheridan, Wyoming, got my generals out of the way, then transferred down to UW. So I went to Laramie for 2 years and got my bachelor's in history. And then, like a lot of people, I graduated with my bachelor's degree, had no idea what to do, but I knew I wanted to serve the country, so I ended up looking into it and ended up joining the Air Force in 2012. So I went to basic training in July and August 2012, one of the hottest Augusts on record, down in San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base. For military guys, you might be questioning, you had your degree, why didn't you go officer? Short answer is, before joining, I had no idea what the difference between officer and enlisted was, so the recruiter got me, basically. So I joined as enlisted. Some photos of me in basic training, me being all hot and sweaty in the July-August heat, doing the obstacle course in basic training. It's kind of crop funny, but putting together an M16 rifle that they give you in training. And then the Pugil sticks, I'm right here standing in line waiting my turn to put on football gear and bash each other to death with the Pugil sticks. So that was actually quite fun. So then, as mentioned in the introduction, I was an Air Force meteorologist because I scored really well on the ASVAB test, which is the basically SAT, ACT test they give you a military before you join. So they made me a weather forecaster. So I went to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi for weather training. So in my 6-year career, I ended up going to Mississippi 3 different times. The first time for initial skills weather, which was basically cramming associate's degree into an 8-month period, so pretty stressful. Then the second time for advanced weather school, which was 2 months. And the third time for weather radar school, which was a month-long course. So in total, I spent almost a year of my life in Mississippi, which not a bad place because Keesler Air Force Base, the front gate of the base is a block away from the beach right here. So not too bad, right on the Gulf. Biloxi is home to the Hurricane Hunters, C-130s, as well as a lot of casinos. I guess the story, so I'm a historian, so tie a little history in. The story is that they allowed gambling on the water because of all the steamboats, think Mark Twain. So they allowed it on the water So then they started building casinos out on piers in the water. So that one on the far is the Beau Rivage, biggest building in Mississippi, and it's out on the water, built on a pier. And then Katrina came through, wreaked havoc. The Beau survived, but a lot of them didn't. So then they changed the law and made it so they could build casinos within 200 feet of the water. So then they started building them on land in Biloxi. Went to Biloxi 3 different times. Again, they have the Hurricane Hunters there, which I never actually got a ride on a Hurricane Hunter, but I did get a tour. It's really cool, C-130. Doesn't really show up in the picture, but the nose of that aircraft is all bashed in and dented because of all the hail they get from flying into hurricanes. And the pilots were telling me that as they're flying into the hurricane, they hit the eye wall, and then that's a low pressure center, so they drop 1,000 feet, just like in a roller coaster ride. So quite something. I wish I could have gone on one, but a bit of adrenaline junkie. So I completed my initial skills training in Mississippi. Then they sent me to my first real assignment, my first big boy Air Force assignment, which was at Shaw Air Force Base in Sumter, South Carolina, smack dab in the middle of the state, in the middle of South Carolina. Even though we were smack dab geographically in the middle of South Carolina, we were actually writing the weather forecast for the AFCENT region, better known as the Middle East. So our job was to write forecasts for Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Arabian Gulf region. So kind of the power of the internet. So I get to Shaw, South Carolina. They don't just throw you in. You had 2 months of additional training on how to forecast the weather in the Middle East. And then they put you out actually writing forecasts on what they call the floor. And so my first day on the floor, I was assigned to write the forecast for Bagram Air Force Base, Afghanistan. You probably heard of it. And they had a big dust storm headed their way. So I'm at a shift change briefing about kind of an environment like this, and the commander is like, "Who's got Bagram today?" I raise my hand. He's like, "You're one of the new guys, aren't you?" "Yep. They'll throw you into the fire, basically, baptism by fire." But I did have a trainer, and it worked out okay. But I spent 2 years writing forecasts for the Middle East region. This would have been 2013, 2014 into 2015. So right as we had left Iraq the first time, but then ISIS was retaking over Iraq. So I'm writing forecasts for Iraq as we're going back into Iraq, even though one day we had the news on, and President Obama was saying there's no boots on the ground in Iraq, even though we were writing forecasts for there. So I can't really say much more than that. But so 2 years. Actual work was about a 40-hour work week, but so during work it was pretty stressful, but then the rest of the time it was kind of chill, so I got to explore South Carolina, North Carolina. So we went up to Charlotte Motor Speedway in North Carolina. I got a ride in that NASCAR, a couple laps around Charlotte Motor Speedway. That was quite something. We also went up to Charlotte for a Carolina Panthers game. They gave us free tickets, and because the tickets were free, they put us in the very top row, right in the corner of the stadium. Worst seats in the house, but the tickets were free, so I couldn't complain. We also went to the Biltmore Estate up in Asheville, North Carolina a few times, toured that. Went on a champagne tour there. That's the other pictures. That was a lot of fun, drinking in the Biltmore Estate. I went kayaking, went deep sea fishing off Myrtle Beach there in South Carolina, and Patriots Point at Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston's this absolutely gorgeous town, looks like it did after the Civil War. And Patriots Point is home to the USS Yorktown, which is now an aircraft carrier museum. So that was really cool. So I did a little over 2 years in South Carolina, then the Air Force. I got a little bit of a pick, so I wanted to go closer to home. So I went to Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota. And I was in Rapid City, South Dakota for about 6 days, and my commander, who I hadn't actually met at that point, calls me and says, "Airman Horn, you're going overseas. You're going to Qatar with the B-1s. So I was there at Ellsworth for about 6 months doing my in-processing paperwork at the same time I was doing my pre-deployment paperwork. So they sent me to Al-Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar, right next to the sun. We landed in July, and it was about 2 degrees from breaking Death Valley's all-time record. It was 141 degrees, I think. And then at night, I was mostly on the night shift, and it would be about 100 degrees with 95, 100% humidity because it's right on the Arabian Gulf. So It was a very toasty place. We were there for 6 months. This would have been the end of 2015, early 2016 timeframe. So this was when ISIS was taken back over Iraq. So our B-1 bombers, they broke a squadron record, dropping the most bombs since the Vietnam War for a single squadron, 5,037 bombs. And we were also there during the Boko Haram Paris attack. So that's why the bombs got from Paris with Love, trying to avenge that attack. And some pictures of the base. Very dry, very dusty, very hazy environment. Squadron photo. So I did get to stand on the wing of a B-1. I'm at the end there, circled. So that was really cool. And then as we were leaving, we're in an airport terminal, just packed in like sardines. They come over the intercom. The Rams cheerleaders are coming through. And we're like, what? So the USO tour, the LA Rams cheerleaders came through. And I'm sitting in my seat next to Captain Cassidy. Captain Cassidy's a bit of a joker. He stands up. Airman Horn here is the biggest Rams fan in the world. Never mind that I probably couldn't name an actual player on the Rams. But of course, the cheerleaders, well, they needed to get a picture with the biggest Rams fan in the world. So I got this picture out of it. Whole time I'm thinking, please don't ask me any questions about the Rams. So after that 6 months, I returned to Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota. I was there for a year and a half. In that time, I went to Airman Leadership School. I won Airman of the Month. That's that picture. And the B-1s, they did a photo shoot over Devil's Tower and over Mount Rushmore. And I wrote the forecast for this photo shoot. And that was probably the most stressful forecast I ever wrote. Never mind, we were in the Middle East dropping bombs, literally killing people. They only cared about the photo shoot and the weather for the photo shoot. So, yeah. So I was at Ellsworth again for a year and a half, and then they sent me again with the 37th Expeditionary Bomb Squadron B-1s, this time to Guam for the Continuous Bomber Presence mission. This was in 2017 into 2018. So if you remember the news at that time, that was when North Korea was launching missiles over Japan, threatening to nuke California, threatening to nuke Hawaii, threatening to nuke Guam. So if you listen to the news, especially say maybe the more conservative pundits, there was a question, why don't we just blow up North Korea's missiles on the launch pad? We may or may not have had orders to do that. And there may or may not have been a massive Category 5 hurricane in the middle of the Pacific when that was going on. And guess who's the weather forecaster having to tell all the commanders that? I wasn't a very popular guy at that time. So I was on Guam for 6 months. There was a month-long period where it was tense there. Felt like World War III could kick off at any minute. But then the other 5 months were pretty chill. After that, kind of cooled down. And so I got to explore the island a lot. Guam is only a 30-mile long by 10-mile wide island, so smaller than Carbon County. So you get kind of bored there. But we did get to go on a historic tour of the island and see some of the Japanese guns. So Japan had taken over the island in World War II. Those are some of the guns they installed to defend the island. We went hiking around the island, and you're coming up from the beach up a 1,000-foot hill, and you're like, this is a lot of work. I cannot imagine what the Marines had to do in World War II with all their gear in the heat, knowing that the Japanese were trying to kill them. It's kind of mind-blowing what the Marines had to do. So puts a little perspective on it. This cross is on Mount Lam Lam, which is the tallest mountain on the island. Mount Lam Lam translates to Mount Lightning. And by some account, it's the highest mountain in the world, if you do some clever figuring. So you have the Marianas Trench right off the coast of Guam, deepest part in the world, and the highest part in the island. So it's the biggest vertical change anywhere in the world. Of course, 95% of that's underwater, so we didn't really climb it. But it was a 3,000-foot mountain to climb, and so we did that. That was cool. Also did some survival training, which was fun more than anything, because there was about 30 guys building a single shelter, so we went crazy and basically built a queen-size bed in our shelter, which is what I'm laying on. I did get a pre-flight, a B-1 bomber, which means I got to sit in the cockpit in the pilot seat and flick all the switches to turn on all the engines. So that was really something. Listen to fire up. And probably one of the coolest things I've ever got to do in my life was this far picture at the end. I got to go on an incentive flight on a KC-135 aerial refueler, and we got to refuel a B-1 stealth bomber. So I'm taking this video. So I'm laying down, obviously with my phone, taking the video, and next to me is lying is the guy with the joystick controlling the boom. We're about 20,000 feet up. So that boom is going to go into that circle there. So he's slowly flying in, and the guy next to me, he's talking him in on the radio, 100 feet, 50 feet. Most of the time. That, good question. Not terribly fast for the probably 200 miles an hour or something for an airplane. So yeah, so the B-1s were there because, as I mentioned, the whole North Korea situation. So we saw what they were able to do at Iran. So, but yeah, so the B-1s were there, and those things are crazy because they were parked on the flight line, and because of the stealth technology, it really messes with your depth perception. So they have to traffic cone them off because they've had people drive into them because it messes with your depth perception so much you can't tell where it is. It's just it looks like an alien spaceship. Some more cool things I got to do on Guam. Got to go deep sea fishing. Got a tour of the B-1 and just kind of generally explore the island. So this top photo supposedly where Ferdinand Magellan landed when he made his circumnavigation around the world. It's probably not where he landed, but it's because he would have landed on the north side of the island. That's on the south side, but that's the legend. So after 6 months in Guam, I returned to South Dakota to Ellsworth for 6 more months to finish out my Air Force enlistment. And I decided not to re-enlist, partly because I wanted to live where I wanted to live, not where the Air Force made me. And partly because of what comes next is I ended up going to University of Nebraska Kearney to get my master's degree in history. So because of the bureaucracy of the Air Force, I had already had my bachelor's degree. So they wanted to show improvement. So to pay for it, they needed you to pursue a master's degree. Even though I wanted to pursue a bachelor's in meteorology, which was my career field, they weren't going to pay for that. So I had to start pursuing a master's degree. And then because I had a bachelor's of arts, most weather programs to get a master's degree, you needed a master's of science degree. So I was a little bit stuck, so I just elected to go with my passion, which is history, and start pursuing a master's degree in that. And I chose University of Nebraska at Kearney because this was a 2016, and there was only really 2 options to get an online master's degree in history at that time: Kearney, Nebraska, and Boston College. The reason I didn't really want to go to Boston, as I said, my sisters, I have 2 of them, they lived near Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, so Nebraska seemed more like home. And so I elected to go to Kearney. They had an online master's program because their history department had been on the chopping block, so they wanted to stay relevant, so they created the online program, which really paid off for them because I was there during COVID as well, and it was University of Nebraska Lincoln and Omaha calling up little Kearney, being like, how do we do all this online stuff? So as I said, I was there during COVID. I defended my master's thesis the week the world went nuts with COVID and was shutting down. So defending my master's thesis was the very last thing I did on campus. So photos of Kearney. And so it was at Kearney where I started to get more into the museum world because Kearney's got 3 museums. They have the Archway, which goes over I-80, which is a museum. They have the County Museum, Trails and Rails, as well as the Stone House behind me in the top photo. That is a historic home museum that's actually on the campus. It had been the Nebraska State Tuberculosis Hospital before, and then got ownership turned over to the university. So I volunteered at those museums and worked at those museums during the course of my master's degree. And so I really liked the museum work more than I didn't really want to be like high school history teacher. So that's when I started to get really into the museum world. And then so during COVID, so I defend my master's thesis, COVID hits. So what am I supposed to do? No one's really hiring. So I went back online and I got my master's certificate in museum studies from Harvard because it seemed like a good thing to do online. And then just to share some cool photos. So when I was at University of Nebraska-Kearney, the history department put together a trip to Europe for the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So this would have been June 2019. I got to go pay $5,000 to go over to Europe for this awesome trip. So we started in London, got to see the London Eye, Buckingham Palace, the Imperial War Museum. Then we went up to Bletchley Park, which is where they broke the Enigma code. If you've ever seen the movie Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch, got to play with a real life Enigma machine. Then we crossed the channel to Normandy and saw Omaha Beach, Omaha Cemetery. That's just a small fraction of it. There's crosses, rows and rows, fields and fields of crosses. It's really unreal. That was for the actual anniversary. So President Macron of France was there, gave a speech. President Trump was there, gave a speech. Got a photo of Marine One as President Trump's taken off across the English Channel. And then we went up to Point du Hoc, which is me standing in a crater that the Navy made during the invasion. That whole place looks like the moon, apart from it being green, not gray. But it's just unreal what the Navy pounded them with shells. And then we went to Marie St. Anglaise, which is the church. So there's a parachute with a mannequin stuck up there because during the actual invasion, one of the paratroopers got caught and spent all night up in that church bell tower. So to commemorate that, they put a parachute with a mannequin up there today on the anniversary. And then we went down to Paris and got to do all the Paris things, see the Eiffel Tower, see Notre Dame. We didn't get to go in Notre Dame because this was like 2 months after the big fire they had. So you could see from the river all the scorch marks on the roof. That was really sad, but they've rebuilt it. And do the basic thing where everybody puts their finger on top of the Louvre. And that big pyramid in the Louvre, that's just the gift shop. The thing is massive. It's unreal if you've never been. So then during COVID, I'm working online, getting my master's certificate from Harvard, but it's nice to have money. So I got a job working at the U.S. Postal Service delivering mail. So that's my pickup, delivering mail in a December snowstorm in Nebraska. So fun times. So I didn't get my master's degree to work at the post office the rest of my life. So I took a bit of a chance and applied for a job with the National Park Service at Fort Laramie National Historic Site in Wyoming, kind of by Torrington. And I worked as a park ranger there for the summer of 2021. So there's me, so interpretive park ranger. I spent a lot of my time wearing the uniform of an 1870 soldier. Was on the cannon crew for the M1841 12-pound mountain howitzer. So he'd give like a half an hour presentation on how that cannon works and then fire it off, which was the biggest thrill at the park, the biggest thing to do. We also did small arms demonstrations. So again, a presentation, and then we would fire off volleys from the Springfield Trapdoor 1874 rifles. That's my little niece. She's a lot bigger now. So I spent the summer working at Fort Laramie. If you're familiar with the Park Service or even just the federal government, a summer job is just that, a summer job. So I needed to move on. And I found a job working at the National Archives, Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum. But this is late 2021, so the world's starting to recover, but the federal government's still kind of in lockdown mode. So I worked remotely for the Eisenhower Library. So I took full advantage of that, and I have a camper. So I took my camper and I went all around Colorado while I was working remotely. Saw all these cool places in Colorado, into Utah. Went over to Arches, went to Old Bend Sport, went back to Springfield, Colorado, my birthplace. That was cool to see. Grand Junction. One of the coolest things is Hovenweep. which is the most underrated national park site because it's a lot like Mesa Verde, which is way more famous, but Hovenweep, you can actually walk up to the ruins and get about arm's distance away. So that's really neat. It's right by the Four Corners, just on the Utah side of the Four Corners. So if you're ever down in Four Corners region, definitely check that park site out. So I'm working remotely, not too happy with that situation. I didn't really like the online remote work. So I found a job at the Journey Museum back in Rapid City, South Dakota. So this is now the 4th time I lived in Rapid City. So I worked there for the summer. That's me doing a gold panning activity with some of the kids. Self-promotion, they reached out to me. This is before I took this current job. They reached out to me and wanted me to give a presentation. So I'm scheduled to give a presentation back up in Rapid City in a couple months. And then after that summer job, I went and found a permanent job in Gillette, Wyoming at the Rock Pile Museum. Why is it called the Rock Pile? Because there's a big pile of rocks right out front. Legend is that's a landmark on the early cattle drives. They saw the big rock pile and knew they were getting to Gillette. So I worked in Gillette for 3 years doing exhibits and collection work. During my time in Gillette, again, did exhibits and collections, but most of the photos I found of me are with our World War II 1941 Dodge Power Wagon, which that truck was actually with the Wyoming National Guard during the war. So really cool historic piece. And it runs, so I was able to drive it in the Veterans Day Parade and did historical interpretation with that. We did a big 6th grade World War II Day program every year. Met Congresswoman Hagman. So yeah, spent 3 years in Gillette. And then gets a little disjointed, my presentation, but these are some of my publications. So I wrote my master's thesis, so I tied in my meteorology weather forecasting experience from the Air Force into my history. So I ended up writing my master's thesis on the Great Plains drought of the 1890s and the rainmakers, which the rainmakers, they were con men going around claiming they can make it rain. So I turned my master's thesis into a couple articles. This front one in Annals of Wyoming on Frank Melbourne, the rain wizard. So he got his 15 minutes of fame by going to Cheyenne and making it rain because a thunderstorm popped up while he was there. Unfortunately for him, he could never really replicate that, so his 15 minutes of fame ended pretty quickly. I'm going in September over to the Western Museum in Cheyenne and giving a presentation on that. Then I also turned another of my master's thesis articles into an article for Great Plains Quarterly, which won their 2021 Article of the Year. So I was pretty proud of that. And then I've got several articles on WyomingHistory.org, including G.K. Warren. He was arguably one of the first white guys, maybe the first white guy to see Devil's Tower. The Battle of Bonepile Creek, which was a fight that took place up in Gillette. And then the murder of Allie Means, which I went last year to Tina's Museum, Frontier Prison in Rawlins, and gave a presentation on that. So Carbon County tie-in, so I might have to give a presentation here in Saratoga on that. And then these are some photos of the presentations I've given. And then links to check out my museum, our Saratoga Museum. So any questions?
A million, where do you start?
So who's the most famous person from Springfield, Colorado?
You got me.
I have a sense, probably. Roy Romer.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Colorado.
I didn't even know that. Main claim for fame, I know the story down in Worcester called Springfield, Pocket County, the literal heart of the Dust Bowl. So we had that claim to fame.
Were you there during the tornadoes?
No. Yes, sir.
Since you've been all over, how does Upper North Platte Valley compare?
I really like it here so far. It's nice and quiet. It's really beautiful, so I hope to stick around a while.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of a lead into my question. Why did you come here?
I came here, I saw the job posting, so I thought, good job opportunity for career growth. Drove through the area, thought it was beautiful. It's still in Wyoming, which I like. It's closer to my girlfriend who's in Colorado at the moment, so all those things kind of added up. Seemed like a good opportunity. Yes, ma'am.
What's the most surprising thing you have found out about our museum?
Most surprising thing? I don't know yet. I'm so surprised.
My question's kind of on that line, and you probably don't know this yet either, but what do you think your plans are for the development of the museum?
So, short-term, smaller plans, working on an exhibit for the Hobo Hot Pools. I hope to get that done in the next few months. It's a lot slower doing exhibits when I'm doing everything versus in Gillette when I was doing just exhibits, but so there's that. So I've just been kind of getting my feet under me. I'd like to get so I know before I got here there was talk of a new museum building and things, so one thing, definitely need to figure out how to do it, but I'd like to get a lot more like gallery space so that we could do, say, presentations such as this at the museum. Also, I've already been contacted by one of the guys I worked with in Gillette to display one of his exhibits, and I had to tell him no because we just literally don't have room or a place to do it. So getting some sort of gallery space up there, whether it's a new building or a new part of a building, or I had the idea of renovating maybe the boxcar in the back, which I've only just poked my head in there, so I don't know how realistic that is. So that would be a long-term plan.
How many volunteers do you have at the museum now, and then do you need more?
So yeah, volunteers would be great. Right now, just one main volunteer and then a few of the board members help out. So if you want to volunteer, especially easy thing to do is work the front desk, so you greet visitors. That's an easy, if you're an extroverted person, a great job for somebody to volunteer as. Also collections were, I guess, the most surprising thing, and not in a good way, is how far backlogged or the collections cataloging is. So we could use help with that. And I put up on the website a volunteer application, just so basically contact information and what you'd be interested in volunteering. So if somebody's interested, you can go to our website and then just fill out that volunteer application or just come talk to me.
Will you talk a little bit about collections?
Collections, so right now at the Saratoga Museum, working on most of our collection catalog is not digital yet, so it's mostly paper, so having volunteers digitize that, so historic photos, say scan that, to hopefully start working towards making that available to the general public, to researchers. And then a lot of the things, they haven't been properly accessioned, so we have to go through and so you could take, I don't know, I was photographing for a Facebook post some snowshoes, so it's taking those snowshoes, they do have a number, so it's finding that catalog information in the paper record, making sure it's up to date and correct, and then transferring that to the computer. So that's a lot of the work in the collections department.
You spend a lot of time cleaning up the basement.
Cleaning up the basement, yeah. And we could use volunteers. There's a closet in the basement that could be cleaned up. There's the pavilion has a basement area that this summer when it's warmer and that you're not freezing, somebody could go through and reorganize that. It needs it. So just things like that as well.
The rock pile that you were talking about in Gillette, was that natural or was that piled up?
The rock pile is natural
It
feature.
was, okay. Yeah, any idea how it was formed?
That I don't know. I think just natural erosion, because there's a few rock piles like that. You drive around the area, and they're there. That one just happened to be in the town, and it's really visible from where the fire department now is, but that historically was the fairgrounds. And so you could see it from the fairgrounds, and kids would climb up on it and play during the county fair. And so that's one of the reasons it got preserved, is because kids growing up in Gillette in the 40s and 50s became adults in the 70s, and so they wanted to preserve that because they had fond memories of it. And so that's why the museum got placed there in the 1970s.
What kind of motorcycle riding do you like to do?
I have a 2008 Suzuki Boulevard 850cc cruiser style. So I got into that when I was in South Dakota because, of course, Sturgis, motorcycle capital of the world, basically. I worked with a civilian weather forecaster. He taught the South Dakota State motorcycle safety training classes. So he talked me into joining it, taking the class, and I loved it, so I got one. So.
Good.
Are you available for one-on-one conversations? Like, can I make an appointment with you tomorrow?
Yeah.
He has a girlfriend.
I could be his grandmother, but I am, however, not his grandmother, but I'm really interested in history, and I have some specifics to ask questions of you and bring you some things. Bridge Street Bargains is our thrift shop here, and we get gifted things, unbelievable things from the community, and sometimes we get things that I think maybe the museum might be interested in. I'd like to show,
Right.
go find them. So I'm serious about it. If I could make an appointment, I'll talk to you about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
A little bit more about the hot springs. Nancy and I and another person are working with the Visitors Council about putting displays at the hot springs and some of the stuff that's going on. So could we come and visit with you at some time?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Has McCall talked to you yet?
No.
Okay, well, we'll give you our contact information.
I did take him, the program that I present on the hot springs, and he took it digital, and I've been trying to figure out how to do that for years. He did it in about 10 minutes.
There you go, okay.
This is available on our website. I just made it live last night.
Oh, wonderful.
That's not a touchscreen. Touchscreens are cooler with it, but you can use a little slider.
Oh, nice.
That's part of that historical reproductions that will be going up to the museum here. Hopefully before the summer.
So I've got 4 of those type pictures on the website.
Oh, wonderful.
currently. So it's kind of fun. I just it's almost a hobby.
That's on the museum
This is on
website.
the museum website.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. Yep. Nice.
You missed the weather part.
I do. Biggest thing I miss about the Air Force is just the people. A lot of good people, and some of my best friends were in the Air Force. So, meteorology side of it, I really like doing. So it's useful to know to forecast if you're trying to travel. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's snowed. Wow. Today. Just look at the webcam from snow.
Yeah.
So what got you started in history? What was the thing that made you interested in?
I think the thing that got me interested in history is the first thing I can remember about that would be I would have been in 4th grade and watching a documentary on National Geographic about the Battle of Midway. I think it was National Geographic, but Battle of Midway. And then halfway through the program, because that battle was very one-sided for the Japanese, and then the Americans came back and win. So, and of course, documentary, they're framing it like a comeback story. And so I turned to my dad and said, did we win? And he's like, well, keep watching. And I thought that story Battle of Midway was so cool. So I got into World War II. That's most historians, the gateway drug into history is World War II. So that's how I got started.
Have you been to the museum up in Du Bois, the military vehicle
I
museum?
haven't been to the Du Bois Museum yet. I need to get there, yeah.
It's amazing. And veterans get in for free. We're glad you're here.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tuesday Talks, for inviting me.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you, yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Very nice.